My fiance went to Italy for space 2 months before our wedding, blocked me everywhere, then came back pregnant claiming it's mine. I'm James, 32 years old, and for a long time, I thought I had my life figured out. You know that feeling when everything just clicks, like the universe is finally throwing you a bone? That was me. I had a decent job, solid friends, and a fiancée, Lauren, who I'd been with for nearly 7 years. 7 years, long enough to know someone inside out, or at least that's what I believed. Lauren and I had been engaged for 2 years. We weren't rushing the wedding, we wanted everything to be perfect. The venue was booked, the date was set, and things were falling into place. She had her Pinterest boards for flowers and dresses, and I was mostly focused on not screwing up the guest list. It felt normal, comfortably chaotic, like planning a wedding should be. Then, out of nowhere, Lauren tells me she's going to Italy. At first, I thought, cool, why not? Italy's beautiful. She'd always talked about wanting to see Florence, Rome, Venice, all those postcard perfect places. But the timing threw me off. It was just a couple of months before the wedding, right in the middle of finalizing everything. Still, I told myself it wasn't a big deal, she deserved a break. But then she said she needed space. That word stuck with me, space. It wasn't like we'd been fighting or anything. Sure, wedding planning had its stressful moments, but nothing major. So why would she need space? I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe it was just nerves. Everyone gets cold feet before a wedding, right? That's normal. A few weeks later, I'm driving her to the airport. She's practically glowing, talking about all the places she's going to visit and how this trip is going to be good for her. I didn't ask too many questions. Honestly, I didn't want to seem controlling or insecure. But there was this knot in my stomach I couldn't shake. Watching her walk into the terminal felt weird, like, really weird. I chalked it up to the fact that we'd never spent this much time apart before. But deep down, something didn't sit right. And that's how it started, the trip to Italy. At the time, I had no idea it would be the beginning of the end. At first, everything seemed fine. Lauren texted me when she landed, sent a few pictures of her and her friends in Florence, and even called me once to tell me how amazing the food was. I'll admit, it felt a little off, like she was just ticking boxes to keep me from worrying, but I brushed it off. She was on vacation, after all. The first few days went by without a hitch. Her messages were light and casual, updates about sightseeing, jokes about how much she was walking, and the occasional miss you thrown in for good measure. It wasn't constant, but it was enough to feel normal. By the end of the first week, though, things started to change. The texts became shorter, less frequent. Instead of long updates, I'd get one-liners like super busy today or Wi-Fi sucks, we'll call later. Only later never came. I tried not to overthink it. She was probably just caught up in the excitement of being in Italy, who wouldn't be? But the longer the silence stretched, the harder it was to ignore. By the second week, she'd practically gone radio silent. I'd send her a good morning text and get no reply. Hours would go by, and nothing. By evening, I'd send another just checking in. Still nothing. One night, I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I told myself her phone was probably off, or maybe she'd run out of battery. But the next day, the same thing happened. And the day after that. I started to feel like a ghost, like I didn't exist in her world anymore. That's when I decided to check her Instagram. She was always posting on there, sharing photos of food, sunsets, or whatever cute little cafe she'd stumbled upon. But when I opened the app and searched for her profile, it wasn't there. At first, I thought she might have deactivated her account. But when I looked at her tagged photos, I realized the truth. She hadn't deactivated anything. She'd blocked me. Blocked. I remember sitting there, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of it. 7 years together, 2 years engaged, and now blocked, like I was some random ex-boyfriend she didn't want to deal with anymore. I tried calling again, straight to voicemail. I sent a text, hoping. Maybe it was all a mistake. Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's okay. The message didn't go through. That's when it hit me, this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. For days, I couldn't think about anything else. My mind ran in circles trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, what I'd missed. Was she mad at me? Was this her way of breaking things off? Or was there someone else? By the end of the second week, I was done making excuses for her. If she wanted space, she could have it. But I wasn't going to sit around waiting for her to decide whether or not I was worth her time. So, I made a decision. I started canceling the wedding. The venue, the caterer, the flowers, every single thing we'd planned. Each call felt like ripping off a band-aid. Painful, but necessary. And you know what? It felt good. Not at first, of course. At first, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But after a while, the relief started to creep in. I wasn't going to let her hold me hostage anymore. If Lauren wanted to disappear, that was her choice. But I wasn't going to wait around for her to come back. It had been 3 weeks since Lauren left for Italy, and I hadn't heard a word from her. At this point, I was doing everything I could to move on. My friend Emily kept telling me I dodged a bullet, and part of me believed her. Still, there was this lingering sense of unfinished business, like the ghost of our relationship was still hanging around, refusing to let me breathe. Then, out of nowhere, she called. I didn't recognize the number at first. It wasn't her usual one, and I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. And when I did, it was her. Her voice was calm, casual even, like nothing had happened. She didn't acknowledge the weeks of silence, didn't ask how I'd been. Instead, she jumped straight to logistics, her flight details, the time she'd be landing, and a simple, "We need to talk." I didn't say much. Honestly, I was too stunned to process it. But one thing was clear, she expected me to pick her up from the airport, like I was just waiting around for her to come back and explain herself. I didn't go. Instead, I spent that morning at work, trying to distract myself from the knot in my stomach. I knew she'd find her way home eventually. Lauren always had a way of landing on her feet, no matter how messy things got. Sure enough, when I got back to my apartment that evening, she was there. She looked different, tired, disheveled, like she'd been through hell. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the silence, the blocking, the complete disregard for me and our relationship. She stood on my doorstep clutching her bag like it was the only thing holding her together. Her eyes were red, her voice barely a whisper when she asked if she could come in. I let her in, not because I wanted to, but because I needed answers. She sat down on the couch, and for a while, neither of us said anything. I stayed standing, arms crossed, waiting for her to start. Finally, she broke the silence. She told me she was pregnant. At first, I didn't react. The words didn't even seem real. Pregnant? After everything she'd done, after cutting me out, disappearing without a trace, now she wanted to tell me she was pregnant? I felt a rush of emotions, anger, confusion, disbelief. But above all, I felt betrayed. Not just by her actions, but by the timing of it all. Why now? Why not tell me when she found out? She tried to explain, something about being overwhelmed, about not knowing how to handle it. She said she found out during the trip and panicked. That's why she blocked me. That's why she needed space. It didn't make sense. None of it did. And then she dropped another bombshell. Her parents knew. Not only that, but they thought I needed to step up and take responsibility. I didn't even know what to say. On one hand, if the baby was mine, of course I wanted to be there. But on the other hand, how could I trust anything she said? That night, I barely slept. The weight of everything felt suffocating, the silence, the pregnancy, the way she just assumed I'd fall in line. I kept replaying the past few weeks in my head, trying to piece together the truth. But no matter how hard I tried, one question kept coming back to haunt me. What wasn't she telling me? The next day, I woke up feeling like I was caught in a fog. Lauren's news about the pregnancy was still sinking in, but there was something about the way she delivered it that didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just the timing, it was the way she avoided certain details, the way her words felt rehearsed. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering. By lunchtime, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Maybe she really had panicked. Maybe the stress of the wedding and the pregnancy had been too much. People make mistakes, right? But then, in the middle of the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Megan, Lauren's younger sister. Her message was simple: we need to talk. It's about Lauren.
If you want to watch the part 2, click on share and more.